Good evening, everyone. I have a special treat for you this evening. We will be reading the first real explicit scene of my freshman novel, Down in the Dirty. I'm your host, author J.M. Benjamin, www.anewqualitypublishing.com. Without further ado, because I've made you wait all weekend, I'm going to cut into the first scene where Stax visits Desiree for the first time. You guys ready? Let's begin. Stax came in the bathroom after talking to Vanessa on the phone. He figured he'd be at Desiree's house all night, so he figured he'd tell her that he had got a room after he had handled his business. He hated lying to Vanessa about Desiree, but he was in too deep, so it was only right that he continued to flow with these strings of lies. Desiree was still in her silk robe when he came out. She was preparing a plate of food for him in the kitchen. Stax could smell the flavors and spices from where he stood. The aroma made him realize just how hungry he was. He was brought up that way to a man's heart was through his stomach, and he believed that. The two most important people in his life, his mother and his grandmother, could throw down in the kitchen. Desiree sensed his presence and turned around, flashing him a spat. Do you want to eat it here or in the living room in front of the television? I got trays if that's what you want, she said. Yeah, no, that's cool. We can eat in the living room. Okay, well, you can go in there and sit down. I'll bring your plate to you. Yes, Mommy, Stax said, smiling. Boy, shut up. I ain't mean it like that, Desiree said while smiling as he went into the living room. She reappeared with a tray bearing Stax's plate and beverage. She quickly went back into the kitchen to retrieve her tray. The meal was steaming hot and the scent of good food filled the air. She handed Stax the plate and he readily accepted it. Stax smiled, rubbed his hands together and immediately dug in. He finished the macaroni and cheese and last piece of fried chicken and knocked off the rest of his Corona while he and Desiree watched the movie Love Jones on DVD. Yo, that meal was banging. You did your thing, Ma. Stax said. Thank you, I do a little something, Desiree said modestly. Nah, it was more than that. I like a shorty who can burn it down in the kitchen, cause a brother love to eat. Yeah, I see. Cause you got your weight up. Stax smiled. Yeah, you gotta feed the muscle. I wouldn't know about that because I ain't got none, Desiree said. And I definitely ain't working out. Maybe not, but you definitely got body and you looking right too. So I know that food be going all the right spots. If you say so, nah, Ma, I know so. Oh, here comes my favorite part. Desiree grabbed the remote to turn up the volume. I love when Lorenz Tate, with his fine ass, freestyled his poem about Nia Long. Yeah, no doubt. He do his thing, and Nia's a sexy motherfucker, too, Stax commented. Desiree picked up on his statement. You only said that because I called Lorenz Tate fine. Desiree smiled. Okay, you got that. No more lusting over actors for either one of us, deal? Deal. By the time the movie reached the middle, Desiree was laid across Stax's lap. She had fallen fast asleep. Or at least that's what he thought. Stax didn't bother to disturb her because he didn't mind. After all, who would complain about a beautiful woman lying across them? No one in his right mind, he thought. He sat there watching the rest of the movie but was distracted by Desiree's silk nightgown, which hiked up each time she tried to find a comfortable position. He could see her long, smooth legs from start to finish, and occasionally the side of her apple-shaped body that would reveal itself, causing his manhood to become alert. He wondered if she could feel it while she was asleep. There was no way he could hide it, not with her lying across him. Desiree enjoyed this part of their evening and was good at what she did. She knew Stax was convinced she was asleep, and her playful teasing was doing the job. It took all her strength to keep from laughing, especially when Stax's male member was damn near poking her in her ear. She hadn't worn any panties underneath her nightgown, so that once she started working her magic, Stax would get an eyeful. Stax debated on whether to slide Desiree's gown up or leave it be. He didn't want to wake her and see the gown hiked above her thighs and think he'd been looking, even if it were true. He was just about to fix her gown when Desiree rolled onto her back and placed her hand between her inner thighs. He couldn't believe his eyes. From the waist down, he could see Desiree's flesh, and what a sight it was. Her manicured hand barely covered the small patch of hair between her legs. Stax's heart raced and began to increase as his joint was ready to burst through his jeans. He didn't know whether to wake her up or try to slide his malehood out of her way. Although the way Desiree's hand was positioned, it would be very difficult. Stax had never been in a freaky predicament like this one before, so he was stuck trying to decide what to do with the half-naked woman in his presence. He wished Desiree would change her sleeping position and roll over. Dang, he said under his breath. Desiree was almost in tears with laughter, dying inside. She felt bad for Stax, for having to go through the torture she was putting him through. She was surprised he didn't catch her smiling a few times. Desiree could hear his rapid heartbeat from his stomach. She figured he'd suffered enough. Besides, the movie was about to go off, she knew. She heard Nia Long reciting the poem at the club for Lorenz Tate. So she decided to bring her teasing game to an end, but still turn up the heat at the same time. Just as Desiree was about to open her eyes, she felt Stax pull his arm up from under her, causing her to wait and see what he was trying to do. For a brief moment, the thought crossed her mind that he might be some type of pervert and was trying to cop a free fill. But she erased the thought quickly because she knew that wasn't his style. She realized Stax was actually trying to pull her nightgown down. Most dudes would have been trying to pull it up as high as they could, she thought. Admiration and respect filled Desiree's heart for him, but she was not going to allow him to defeat her purpose. She clashed a fistful of her gown, causing Stax's hand to slip onto her bare skin. His touch sent a chill through her body, triggering a warm, tingling feeling between her legs. His hand felt strong, but smooth, like he had never done a hard day's work in his life. Desiree felt the heat emanating from his hand, circulating all through her body. She wondered why he hadn't made a move on her as of yet, but it didn't matter because she intended to make the first move. Stax continued to let his hand rest on Desiree's thigh, not knowing why. This was the second time in a couple of weeks that he had been mesmerized by a woman's beauty. First, it was when he had seen Vanessa in the nude, and now with his hand glued to Desiree's thigh. He couldn't believe how he went from not being involved with anyone to wanting to be involved with two beautiful women. Both of them were bad to him, he thought, and there was no doubt he was feeling them both. Stax knew he had to move his hand before Desiree eventually woke and saw it. So as gently as possible, he began lifting it from off her body. But he did a little too late. Desiree's eyes opened and she grabbed his hand. She looked dead into Stax's eyes, and he couldn't imagine or predict what was going to happen next. Though he tried, he couldn't read the look on Desiree's face. He wanted to at least explain before she thought the wrong thing. Just as he was about to say something, Desiree placed her two lips and guided Stack's hand between her legs. She shushed him. Stax was messed up and couldn't believe it. All night since he had been looking at her half-naked body, he had wondered how it would feel and taste down there. He snickered to himself, and now his curiosity was about to be satisfied, he thought. Desiree was on fire between her inner thighs when Stack's finger entered her secret den. She eased closer to him and began kissing Stax while he kept his finger inside her womb. After kissing him on the mouth, Desiree moved her attention to his neck. She moved his finger from her sex so that she could straddle him. He was used to being in charge, but liked how things were going and knew that he could take over any time he felt the need. I don't know about you, but I'm getting kind of hot. Desiree lifted Stack's shirt while kissing and admiring his body. She liked the way he was put together. Everything was nice and solid, she thought. Both his chest and abs were hard, but she could tell that his drinking was catching up to him. Nonetheless, she hadn't been with a man this much in shape in a long time. Although the whole night was about business, she was looking forward to the pleasure part. She began to unbutton his jeans, and even before she had them fully open, she could feel his erection ready to burst out of them. Stax lifted up so that she could slide them down. Desiree was impressed when she removed his gray boxer briefs, which matched his tank top and t-shirt. She grabbed his dick and skillfully took him into her mouth. Stax moaned. When it came to pleasuring a man orally, Desiree's props were all the way up. Her whole crew had official head games. They used to sit around at one of their cribs, smoke weed, drink, and discuss the best way to go down on a man for hours straight. Keisha was notorious when it came to the best, but Desiree came in a close second, and that night she was putting down her best head game. Stax had been trying to refrain from busting off, but Desiree was making it real difficult the way she was handling her business on his joint. He had gotten hair from some of the best in the business and placed Desiree immediately as number one. She had him going crazy, and he thought it felt better than some of the females he had sexed in the past. As much as he would have liked to let go, he held it down a little while longer. Just when he thought he couldn't take it anymore, Desiree stopped. She attempted to straddle him, but Stack stopped her in midair. Enough was enough, he thought. He laid back long enough, allowing her to drive. It was now his turn to take the wheel. All in one swift motion, he laid Desiree on the couch. She was so caught off guard. She was used to being the dominant one sexually, even to the most aggressive men. But Stax was too strong, and her position was too awkward for her to regain control. Stax spread her legs wide enough for his head to fit in between them. The entire time Desiree was doing him, Stax fantasized about doing the same to her. He wondered how she tastes. Her scent was a mixture of an exotic body spray and her natural sweetness. Stax began to go to work immediately. Desiree thought she was only one who knew what she was doing when it came to handling her business orally. But the way Stax attacked her clit with his lips and tongue had her climbing the walls. She no longer cared about Stax not stopping. She hadn't been with a man sexually since the last dude she had set up, and that was almost a year ago. She realized just how much she needed a tune-up, and Stax was definitely the right maintenance man for the job. After multiples of orgasms, 4 to be exact, Stax came up for air. Now you can take back over, he said with a devilish grin. Desiree was still recuperating from his official tongue lashing and said nothing. Instead, she got up and straddled him again, this time guiding him inside of her. She rode him until they both reached that climatic stage. Desiree continued to stroke and gyrate her hips and inner thighs on Stack's body as she wrapped her arms around his neck. All of a sudden, at the same time, simultaneously, they both began to breathe uncontrollably, lost in their own thoughts. Stacks was thinking about how intense the sex was and wondered how he was going to deal with both Desiree and Vanessa now that he and Desiree had crossed the line and the point of no return. Desiree, on the other hand, thought about how hard it was going to be to go through the entire stick-up and set up with her clique's initial plan since she had officially fallen for Stacks. The chemistry was on 1,000 between the two of them. Nothing ever felt this right before to her. And a meaningful relationship with a man like Stacks was all she ever really wanted in life. Desiree rolled over and moved and cuddled beside Stacks. Stacks drew her closer and kissed her on her forehead. Each, both in their own deep throat, they drifted off to sleep. I hope you enjoyed this scene just as much as I read it. Enjoyed reading it. I'll resume shortly after I dry off and put something on more appropriate. But if you haven't been following already, log on to YouTube, A New Quality's YouTube page. That's A New Quality Bedtime Stories with J.M. Benjamin. Stay tuned for the next chapters. See you soon.